Welcome to LG Hockey Hotline. Kind of funny, no music tonight, but we'll have that figured out by next Saturday. We are back on a weekly basis here for you guys starting tonight. We will be doing Saturday nights normally, but Goose has some other things going on tomorrow, so we moved the show up a day, and we're going to start talking about Season 3 with you, how bidding went. We covered the draft. This is officially our first show with just the three of us. It's going to be interesting and fun, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Marina Conda, Goose Chuck, how you guys doing tonight?
Doing good, man. Doing good. The draft is over. Bidding is done. Rosters are getting finalized here, and we're almost ready to go, boys. We only got 48 hours, and we're going to be playing games with live bullets. So we got a lot going on in the next couple days, Goose. You looking forward to this or what, man?
Absolutely. My first, full experience at the NHL level. I think I played like one game last year in the NHL, so that doesn't really count to me. And that was for Chicago. Now I'm in Tampa, so it's exciting to see what we can do here as a group with the Lightning and what it's going to be like in Season 3 of the LGHL.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to kind of see how everything unfolds. The waiver wire and trades opened up today, and people were able to kind of move their draft picks off the training camp back up to the roster, send guys down that they won in bidding, make trades that they agreed to over the last couple weeks, but the trade window was closed because of bidding. And we've seen a lot of movement today, and it's crazy because we've seen movement from not just random guys, but some of the bigger contracts in the league have moved today, a couple of them. I know your team made a trade. Nashville just made a trade with Buffalo. It's kind of been fast and furious. Everybody was waiting for this window to open to finalize those rosters. We're only 2 days from puck drop.
It's been nonstop today. I mean, as soon as they open the trade window, bang, stuff's been happening. Guys have been getting moved. Trades have been going through. People coming up from training camps. People going down to the AHL. Like everybody. I mean, God help the Bogs because they've been sitting in front of their computers since the trade window opened today, just working on stuff, looking things over, and I'm not sure any of them have even had a chance to eat dinner yet. So it's been crazy. There's been a lot of big news that's come out in the league today. Within the last couple of days, with some owners being taken out of the league, some GMs being taken out of the league. It's been an interesting go here to see kind of the way that this season's shaken out and who's going to be in place where and what happened where with what. It's crazy. But we're going to be here. We're going to try and cover it all, and get everybody up to date on everything that's happened today, or as best we can get the news out there to everyone of the day. And first off, the thing I'd like to jump into on here, boys, is we have an ownership change over in Buffalo. How do you guys see that shaking up the league here? That came down, I believe it came down yesterday, that Falk had been removed from the league. And, they're kind of going through a little bit of turmoil right now as far as finding their leader and getting their roster set to move it forward into Season 3.
Yeah, I can't say I know why it all happened. I can't say exactly what this brings to Buffalo with a new owner. I mean, it's not like you're getting a new centerman or something. You're getting a new owner that's gonna, they could have a completely different view on what they want with the team, what players they like. We already saw them make a couple of trades, so it's a matter of how drastic is this going to affect the team.
Yeah, and it's an interesting time to become an owner of a team at this point. I don't know. Scrumsy's their GM. Did he get moved to ownership, or is there someone else
Well,
that's owner?
I believe he did. I cannot comment on that 100% because I don't know. But you would think that the natural course of things, that the next man in line would be Scrumsy, who is the GM. He moves up, takes over ownership. I would think. I mean, it's kind of short notice to find an owner. The wheels are in motion. I mean, teams are getting ready to play. So, I mean, AHL teams are getting ready to play. Things are in motion down there. So, I would think the only course of action would be to promote Scrumsy to owner and just kind of see how the season goes for Buffalo. It's going to be one hell of a difference from the Stanley Cup champion winning team last year that there was in Buffalo. It's going to be a little bit different over there this season for sure.
It is, but they can still be successful. They've got a lot of decent guys on that team. When you see something happen like this, basically on the eve of the season, they made a trade for Ryan X28, the goalie from Nashville, who was actually their AHL GM last season. He was a defenseman last season, but he's more known to be a goalie, and that's what he switched back to. So there might have been some different thoughts on who they wanted on the roster between guys, and now, Scrumsy's in charge right now, is still as GM anyway. I don't know who's officially the owner, but there's not really much more other than maybe one or two trades you can make right now. There's not really that many teams trying to move a ton of people with the season being right here. So it's kind of go with what you got. And, they do have a solid team. They've got a couple of solid guys on the back end. They got Jay Cool at center, who we saw earlier this week. He's pretty good at getting to the net. So I don't think they're going to be in a ton of trouble, but it is big news to see that happen so close to the season. And same with the AHL teams losing GMs today and stuff. It's kind of bad timing for a lot of teams. Tough to find management at this point, this close to the season, especially when that management doesn't get to pick his team. So we'll see how it all plays out. And it doesn't spell disaster necessarily for any of these guys, but it does throw a wrench in there that could make it kind of tough. But what are you guys seeing out of the league here through preseason? I know not a ton of teams played preseason. We played a few games, but it kind of seems like some people were taking the week off and kind of hanging out, getting ready for the grind, but it's coming and it's starting to get kind of busy in the shout box again. People are starting to talk about games, and we're only 48 hours from when they start.
Yeah, I played. Tampa probably played 4 or 5 preseason games, maybe a couple more. I only played a couple, but that's one thing you notice again with the NHL. Not everyone feels like they want to play preseason games, and you don't have to. It's just preference. I mean, we had a bunch scheduled. We only played half of them probably because teams didn't want to. But I don't really think that's going to affect a team's beginning of the season that much, unless you have a completely different team and brought in a bunch of new players. If you have a decent core from the year before, I don't really think it's going to affect your team that much.
Yeah, that's
I
a great
agree.
point.
It's the preseason is the preseason. It's good to gauge yourself and see where you're at. But honestly, personally, I'd rather keep it all in house in the preseason, to be honest, and not show your hand, so to speak. We did. I think we ended up playing 4 as well, and they went all right. It's preseason. What are we talking about? Talking about practice. But it is good to see kind of how you're gonna react in live situations, and it's nothing compared to what the real deal is going to be come here Sunday, when guys are ready to roll here. And I did just want to throw one quick thing out there to Ryan, because you guys had mentioned him getting traded. I bet you he, out of all people, is absolutely ecstatic to be going to the Buffalo Sabres because he's a Buffalo boy. He's going to his hometown team. I might just be a little bit jealous of that, but we'll let it slide. This is video game hockey. Can't be on your hometown team yet, but congrats to Ryan and getting to the Buffalo Sabres there.
Yeah, I talked to him on Skype when he let our club know he got traded, and I did think it was pretty funny out of all teams to trade for him, it was Buffalo. But it kind of makes sense, He worked with Rochester last year, did a great job with them.
Absolutely.
And now he's up on the in the big club. The best for Ryan. He's a great kid and a really good player.
He is.
Looks like they're still, probably making some moves, I would think. I mean, as it stands
Yeah.
right now, they've only got 8 forwards on the roster. They've
Hmm.
got their D-men in place, and they've got their goalies in place. So,
Well, Falk was a
they,
forward, so they
yeah,
got to
they
figure
still
that
got
out.
to figure that out. I would imagine they may look in-house and look down to Rochester to get that done, or maybe they're in the works of, maybe sending down a trade here while we're on the air. You never know, something could come across the wire. But speaking of trades, boys, what are some of the big trades that you guys saw come out today that really caught your eye? Goose, I know you were talking about a couple as we were prepping for the show. What are some big trades you saw out there that caught your eye, Goose?
Well, two of them one of them I just found out about a minute ago. One that came earlier. Let me see if I can find it. We saw Toronto trade Hazy Hype and a first round pick to the Islanders for Boss of Bosses. I thought that was pretty interesting. We know, I still preach Hazy's he's really good, but I feel like people just he might annoy people or he might get on their bad side at one point. I don't know, but Hazy's a good player, so the Islanders picked up a good forward there, and I think they'll like that trade. But one I just found out about, Tampa Bay, we traded away DDW4 and Harry Hoodlum to the Predators for Mesmerize and Dominido. I think that's how you say it. I'm not too familiar with the guys from Nashville. I know Mesmerize is solid, but we'll see how that affects us in Tampa. That was definitely, talking to a lot of people around the league, that was a surprise trade to a lot of people. One of those blockbuster trades, I guess you could say, maybe. But we'll see how it affects us. And again, there you see Nashville making some more moves.
Yeah, a couple of things that caught my eye this afternoon were we're already seeing first round draft picks getting moved for next season, and when you see a team like Nashville move a first round pick, it's not that big of a deal really because they're one of the top teams in this league and they plan on being a late 20s pick, if not 30. Of course, their goal is to win the cup. But to see first round picks moving so quickly, like literally the second that the trade window opens, it's definitely something that catches your attention because I know it looks like the Penguins traded their first round pick to San Jose. It was part of a trade. It says this is the conclusion to a trade we made last season. So I guess they weren't able to finish that deal. So that's why that one moved. But Nashville, same thing, I guess, was an arrangement from last year. It's just weird to see first round picks going that quick. But I see that Buffalo also made a move trading the center Taves, LL_19-Taves, to I guess the Blue Jackets, and the Blue Jackets got Crisis, a good friend of ours, in return. I don't know if he got traded from New York this morning or something, or what's going on there, but the trade just happened like 3 hours ago. And, Taves was a center that was almost 3 points a game in the NHL last year.
Yeah, that's an interesting trade too. To see. It's interesting to me that Columbus has 4 centers on the roster right now. Obviously, one of them is going to be jumping over to right wing, I would think. I'm just curious to see who that odd man out is, if they're going to actually keep Bouch up in the NHL, or what they have planned over there in Columbus. But Columbus has a strong team, as we all know. Trio Big Mac is one of the best defenders in the league. Niner's done a good job over there of creating his French Connection team, along with J Claus, who went for a whopping 10.25 million in the in NHL bidding. It's going to be interesting to see how they do. They have an interesting lineup over there in Columbus, and they have Vex, who's a phenomenal forward and one of the best goalies in the league in his own right when he decides to step between the pipes. So they've got a really good team over there, and it's going to be interesting to see how Taves fits into the mix with Columbus.
They have options for sure.
Yeah, I'll tell you, and you mentioned those those draft picks going real soon, and that is interesting to me, but as most think, and I don't know if I quite agree with this yet or not. It really all depends on how many people sign up for the league, guys. If you could have some of these VG guys, like we were talking about on the draft show, still straggling into LG and still finding out about it. I know there's a guy who joined up this year. It's his first season in LG from VG, and he was one of the leading scorers over there in VG. So, I think every draft crop is going to be interesting, and I think guys are going to be real quick to move their first or second rounders this season and beyond, because they're going to, their mindset is, the draft's going to get weaker and weaker and weaker every year. It's just going to keep getting weaker. Well, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. Could very well be true. I'm not going to lie. Could very well be true. But as word spreads on the PlayStation side to guys about LG and more people find out about this league, the more and more talent it's going to draw in. So I'm not so quick to say that the talent pool is going to really diminish. So, if I'm more inclined to maybe hang on to draft picks. But, you do see guys throwing those things around like crazy. And, there was a lot of draft picks moved today between teams and a lot of movement. And, I saw some interesting trades. That Hazy Hype trade is interesting. And you know how people say it may annoy him, but he doesn't talk on the mic. So I'm like, how's he annoying people? And for the most part, he's been kind of quiet in the shout box lately for Hazy Hype standards.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate to see him get moved off the team he was drafted on. But maybe he'll find his niche in the Islanders locker room and maybe hang on over there and find him a spot in the lineup. Another one that sticks out to me a little bit is Snoop going Snoop 651. He's a good friend of mine. We played together in VG for quite a while, and he went to the Avalanche for Noel Baby, it looks like. And that's an interesting trade to me as well, because Snoop's a really good defender. So there's a lot of trades here today that happened that are going to be, could make or break a team's season, to be honest with you. And it could make or break a team's future as well with some of these draft picks that have been moved today.
And it'll be interesting to see, when we get later in the season, halfway through the season, and looking back based on the stats and whatnot, how these trades turned out for every team that made them. Will we see a guy like Hazy Hype go over and lead the Islanders in points sort of thing? Or will we see somebody who got traded and they end up, not being able to mesh with their new teammates? And it could, like you said, it could make or break a season, but that's legitimate. It really could have that impact.
Well, here's an example. Arizona traded their number 1 overall pick last season, not having a good season, and Boston ends up winning the lottery and picking Bone Crusher number 1 overall. And basically, from our standpoint, had we been here last season, we'd be sitting here right now thinking we basically gave Bone Crusher away for nothing.
Yeah.
That if you look at that deal like that. So you might see that at the end of the year for sure, especially with the draft picks. I mean, one of the things that just caught my eye, in the trades that I'm looking at is some compensation for restricted free agency signings. And that's where we see a couple of first-round picks going. Like, for instance, Dallas had to send the Rangers their first-round pick because they signed Viper 2601 in restricted free agency. So that's another reason why we're seeing some of these first-round picks go. I think the same thing. What I think is kind of interesting is that the first-round draft pick of Colorado went to Buffalo, and that is compensation for restricted free agency signing of Noel Baby, who they just traded. So, like, it's kind of interesting to see how all this stuff fits together like that. And definitely crazy when you start seeing this trade list open up and literally over the course of 5 hours, there's 40 different things that the Bogs had to put in here. And it's funny because I see all different types of names on this list of people who were involved in these deals. And I couldn't imagine what that must have sounded like, getting alerts on my phone or computer all day as a Bog trying to get all these deals done. But it's fun from where we sit to see this. And teams are about to be done, at least for now. You know, there will be trades every week. They're not going to stop at all. But the core group of guys for each of these teams are pretty much there, with the exception of one or two deals that teams may make over the next day or two to start the season. And then, you know, based on how week one goes, those first 9 games, teams will decide. You know, it's not 1 week and 3 games are gone. It's 1 week and 9 games are gone. So this season will go by fairly quick, and you'll see people probably starting to get frantic and making moves to get the right people if they feel like they need to do something. So there's going to be a lot to watch for as we move forward into the season.
Yeah, and that's the big thing about trading early on in the season. Obviously, you don't see it too often in the actual NHL because you get you know, in the real NHL, you really know everything about a guy because that's their career.
Yep.
In LG, it's not your career; it's something you do, something you have fun. So sometimes something comes up, work, school, whatever, and somebody has to bow out. So you're making all these trades in the beginning for your goal, I would assume, for week one to have as much of a core as you can have to say, okay, if we have to move this guy or this guy, at least we know our 3 lines are this right now.
Mm-hmm.
And if we move him out, we can swap somebody in. And I think that's a big goal why we're seeing this flurry of trades, because guys are scrambling to get the lines that they want, that they think can take them all the way together for week one. So they know, okay, we're going to play our week one game, you know, Monday night, whatever. If this line doesn't work out, if this line looks ugly, then we can look into making trades. And we only lost a game at the beginning rather than in a playoff hunt last week of the season.
Right. And I just want to clarify something real quick. You're right. This isn't a career, but it sure as hell is starting to feel like one.
I'll tell you, I mean, being first year in actual ownership, and you know,
34
it's been
guys to
crazy.
worry about.
It's been insane. Like, honestly, truthfully, it's all day, every day for me. All day, every day, I'm constantly looking at the website, looking at Skype stuff, going over trades, thinking about stuff, thinking about the roster, talking to Jonathan about stuff, talking to players, organizing this, organizing that. But I love it. You know, it's fun. It keeps me busy. It keeps my ass out of trouble. You know, which is cool, you know, but, you know, I really like the way that things are going, you know, with the league. I think there's some really good owners in place now, and there's, you know, there's some cool stuff going on. So it's going to be fun to watch this season. I'm just shocked at some of the people that have been removed so early in the season. But going back to the trades, you know, I almost am of the mind of, you know, yeah, we want to get certain lines together. You want to do this or that, but why not see, you know, I mean, I guess that would be what the preseason's for, right? That's the thing that shocked me the most about guys not playing preseason or not wanting to.
Right, yeah.
Is, you know, how do you have a solid feel of how your guys are going to respond when live bullets are flying? And I mean, but a lot of these guys know a lot of these players very well. So, you know, I mean, I guess it could, you know, they could have an idea of how things are or are not going to work out. So, but it's just interesting to see. There's a lot of movement for it being, you know, what are we on hour 7 now of the trade window being open, and there's that many moves being made. It's going to be.
That's another thing about preseason, though, too. When you look at it, guys have that mindset. Oh, it's just preseason, and if you don't play well, yeah, it's just preseason. It's not really the regular season. So, you know, you get an idea of how good guys can play, but everyone's sort of in a light mindset during the preseason, and that's when, like you mentioned, it could be too late when you come to the regular season and realize, oh, this isn't going to work. We got to make a move.
Yeah, that's a great point too, because I mean, you don't want to get into season 5 weeks 5 and 6 and be like, okay, it's time to make a move when you're 20 points out of the playoff race.
Yeah.
You know, that happened to us last year. So we know from firsthand experience, not getting your roster set until week 5 or 6 is a pretty bad idea, because by then the hole you've dug could be so damn deep, there ain't no way in hell you're getting out of it.
Yeah, that's for sure. And to kind of move back over to your comment about the draft and these draft picks being traded and how the draft will be weaker. I think the draft will not ever be as deep as it's been the first 3 seasons. I think that's clear. It will never be as deep. But that doesn't mean that the top 10 picks in the first round won't be really good players every season.
Right.
And there's 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old kids right now that are playing this game. They're going to be getting old enough to jump in leagues too. So maybe we ought to start scouting those guys.
Yeah, we just got Oh man!
I don't know, just a thought. Deep
Get him
thought.
signed to an entry-level deal.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I've been scouting this guy since NHL 16.
Don't tell anyone you're joining LG, man. Don't tell
Right,
anyone
right.
you're joining.
Right. Yeah.
Come in.
If you ever see me get banned, go check and see why I got banned, and if it's because of some sort of player tampering, pick up that player.
Oh Lord, have mercy.
But I'm looking through the rosters here, and what I think I see here league wide for at least 20 teams or so is a solid core group of guys that a lot of the teams that were in your conference finals last year or in the division finals in the playoffs, a lot of the playoff teams had a lot of people coming back. We had Sean on to talk about the Dallas Stars on the draft show, and he basically had one spot to fill in bidding after he had his draft pick, so he didn't have too much work to do as far as bidding and scouting and finding guys. He's returning a really solid Dallas team. But then there's other teams like us that literally we have one guy in the organization coming back to the Arizona Coyotes. That's Daniel Epps. Everybody else wasn't here last season. And then there's a mix in between of most of the other teams where basically I would say the core group of guys on these teams is somewhere between 5 and 7 players that are returning. And you're filling in pieces next to them, around them, trying to find that chemistry. And I think that's kind of why you're starting to see moves, is maybe some of these new guys that are brought in on each of these teams are now talking to their GMs and their owners and saying like, hey, I know this guy here and I play really well with him. So if there's a way you can get a deal to make that happen, owners might be searching for chemistry right now on these rosters, and they might be trading for guys that guys on their roster that they just picked up already know, and trying to cut out that finding chemistry process a little bit.
Well, that's the recipe for success in the NHL. I think, as we've seen here so far, is that you have teams, your Washingtons of the world, your Tampas of the world, your Dallases, your Chicagos, your Edmontons, who so far have been perennial playoff cup contending teams. And I know I'm kind of leaving some good teams out of there. Your Ducks of the world, your Vancouver Canucks of the world. These teams are the teams that have that core, and they've retained that core for now going on to a third season. And and that's what you do. I think at this point is you retain that core, and you just kind of put the pieces in where you need them. It's just like they do in the real NHL. They identify and keep a core group of guys together, and they bring in role players to get the jobs done that they need done, the dirty jobs. I think that's what you see league wide, is a lot of teams pulling that off.
And that's the thing I'll preach until I won't say till I die, until I stop playing NHL. I think chemistry is such a huge thing, and you search for that just playing club with some people, and you find guys you're comfortable with, and you start playing with them. But if you can manage to find that same chemistry in a league like LG, you're gonna have so much fun, and you're gonna have so much success in this league, because it's so hard with people being traded all the time, with people dropping in and out of the league, people moving to ownership. People, there's so many different options you can do where year after year, you're not sure if you're going to have the same roster necessarily. So if you can find that core of guys that say, yeah, I'm in it for the long haul, I'll play for, 4, 5, 6 seasons guaranteed, that's massive for your team, and you can rely on certain people if you get that.
Yeah, for sure. So what do you guys see? Have you noticed anything with team builds? Are there anything about guys with big contracts? Are these contracts um, necessarily for the greatest players in the league or best available players and less top-notch players at that position causing other salaries to rise? I mean, there's a thread that was posted by Bad Play BJ that lists the highest contract on each of the 30 teams in LG, and it's kind of weird when you look at the list itself. Some teams, their highest contract, of course, is the $10.25 million contract for a couple of those guys that went in bidding this year, 10 million. But then there's teams where the highest contract on their team is only 6 million. So I don't know. Are there teams that just clearly, obviously, don't want to spend 10 million on one single player? But do you think that has any effect on the team as far as the size of the contract for one player who can only play a third of the games? And will that affect how these teams were able to build depth through the other lines? What do you think, Moran?
Uh, I think it has a lot to do with scouting, man. You got to get your scouting done. You have to be able to find those glue guys. You have to be able to find those cheap, million, 2 million, 500,000, 750,000. You got to be able to find those glue guys to plug into your system, and have them be able to find chemistry with those high ticket guys. I don't think it necessarily destroys a team. It's a big risk. It's a big risk to take to have a high dollar player on your team who's taking up, 1/3 of your cap, and he can only play 3 games a week. 1/3 of your games in a week. So it's a big risk to take. But if you're good at scouting, if you can find the gems out there or the diamonds in the rough, and find the right guys, I don't think it's too big of a risk to take at all. I think it could really pay off big in the end. What about you, Goose?
Yeah, I think the guys are going to get paid what they're going to get paid. Of course, in free agency, we saw Danny Briere and Claus go for over 10 million this season.
Liquify
To me,
too, didn't he? Didn't Liquify go for?
I know he went for a lot. I couldn't
10
find
million.
it.
Yeah, 10
millions.
million
Yeah.
even.
10
So
million club.
yeah, I if something like that bothers a team that much, like, oh, this guy's getting paid this much, and we don't think he contributes as much to the team or something like that, I think that's a little far fetched. I think everyone in this league kind of has a general idea of it doesn't matter what you're getting paid, you're still all on the same team, you still all got to play with each other, and you got to try to win games. So I think we'll see. I think we do see a difference between the teams that didn't want to pay the big bucks for some guys, in the sense that they're. I mean, look at it this way: if you're not paying 10 million for one guy, you're probably paying 5 for two. So you're kind of spreading out a little more, and that can either help you or hurt you, because you look at it again. If the guy's making $10 million in this league, he's probably worth it. The GMs and owners, they're not stupid. So they know why they're spending the money, and you look at a guy again, because I personally play with him, J Claus. He's an absolute game changer. I don't know how much in 17, because it's different than 16, but only time will tell. I'm sure he hasn't lost much of an edge. So, and Danny Briere, I've heard the same things about him as well. So, you're paying big money for a guy because they can absolutely change the game. And just because someone went for 10 million this year doesn't mean last season they could have only went for 8 million. It just could have been salary cap reason. It could have been the guys who are interested. So I don't think the number matters as much, and I definitely don't think it'll hurt a team. But big money guys can certainly help a team more than someone might think.
Well, let's go to those big number guys. Let's dive into into bidding here, and let's give off some of these big numbers. Some of these guys that went for an extremely high price, and whether or not some of these guys went for a lot of money, but like you just outlined, Goose, at first I was, thinking about it. I'm like, yeah, God, $10 million on one player, but you're absolutely right. I agree with you. If you can identify that guy that's going to be a game changer for you, just playing with some of these guys who are that talented at the game, just playing with them, it rubs off on other players. I promise you it does.
Got me drafted 16th overall.
Right. And I'm just to watch those guys play on a nightly basis, he makes other guys around him better.
Yeah.
They see certain things that he does, and they're like, damn, I never thought about doing that. Let me try that. Oh, shit, that worked. You know what I mean? Little stuff like that. So having those guys and spending that money on those guys, I think is totally worth it. And, guys like Liquefy Star, who was Tizwawa, Tizweiwei, excuse me, he went for $10 million exactly. To the Ducks, who are going to be an extremely strong team this year. Who were our three? There were three of them, right? It was Danny Briere, Jay Claus, and Tizwawa, or Liquefy Star, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. There were 10 million. But
yeah.
Here's, before we jump into the top contracts, this is still on that topic. I have a kind of an interesting question. So you were talking about guys on the team and how they perceive the big contract. I think in the NHL, that's less of a big deal than in the AHL, where guys may talk a little more about somebody on the team getting that much money versus them. And, I heard that more down there. Up here, it's more of an expected thing. We know that Liquefy Star is going to go for that much because he's a top D man in this game. When guys are going to be available and bidding like this, I think the interesting question is which owner is willing to not only risk that money, but has put in the time to scout other guys where he can cut the money out of that position so he has the money for the big number guy, but can still fill that position of need with a solid guy, a really good player, that he was able to get at a cheaper price instead of doing the two guys at 7 million or the two guys at 6 million, and do the one guy at 10 million, find a very good person at 3 million and balance it that way. I think it's an interesting question, and you'll see how these teams were built, whether that $10 million contract is the only player on that team, or if that team dominates because that owner, he could spend the money on that one guy because he was so good at finding the rest of the guys on that squad.
I think that's number one, is finding the rest of the guys on that squad. It's going to be the teams that have, the glue guys and these superstars on their teams, I think, that are going to be standing at the end. There are teams who are well balanced. Don't get me wrong. There's teams that have nice cap numbers on a lot of guys, and they're gonna come right along through the season, and they're gonna come out in pretty good shape when it comes playoff time. But when it comes playoff time, these teams with the superstars are really going to be the ones, I think, that rise to the top because they do have those game changers on their team. So, I'm really looking forward to that, to see if, in fact, that prediction is true, to see, or unless some of the, or to see if some of these, spread even teams, are going to be able to get it done. So that's going to be an interesting thing to keep an eye on for sure throughout the season.
Yep. And so I guess without any further ado, let's get into these contracts a little bit. And one thing I will say that I noticed ahead of time, and I noticed in the contracts now, especially looking at this list, but something that we kind of talked about before bidding and kind of when we were becoming NHL owners, it seems to me like all these top contracts that we look at here, I would say probably 66%, so 2/3, or the highest paid contract on that team is for a D-man, not for a forward. There are the forwards that have those large contracts, but most of these 7 to 9 million, 9.5 million, all the way up to 10 for Liquefy dollar contracts are on a number one D-man for that team. And are there that many number one D-men in the league? I guess we'll find out for sure. But it seems to me that the defensive game is a much bigger focus in the NHL than it is in the other leagues, and especially when you're just playing club or anything like that. the higher up you get in competition, the more defensive teams that you're going to face, or the more teams that play better defense, not necessarily a defensive team.
Yeah,
Um,
I can agree with that, especially because you know, I don't know how many people took it into effect, but you know, knowing at the beginning of NHL 17 there was no stick lift for defensemen, and knowing that you're dealing with some great forwards, you know, I think all of us know that EA doesn't like to patch things too quickly. When they do, it's pretty drastic. But we're assuming at least the first 2 weeks of the season, 3 weeks might go by before we see a patch. So having to play without a big defensive you know, not being able to stick
Weapon.
lift sucks.
Yeah.
it might be into season 4 before there's a patch,
Yeah,
because there was
Wouldn't surprise me.
well, there was a thread on
a patch to fix the stick lift. Now they'll
the stick
patch
lift.
it here very soon
Yeah.
to fix certain things, but you know, we kind of saw through the grapevine on a thread by EA themselves on Twitter that
They said February basically.
Jesus.
It was because of the stick lift tie up, which is something I kind of suspected, just because it's working out of the same button,
Yeah.
and kind of the same thing. So I guess that going in, I mean, I don't know what goes into fixing these games like this and whatever. That seems like an awful long time, but either way, it could get fixed next week for all we know. But if we have seen EA themselves say, at least for now, it looks like maybe February before the stick lift's fixed. So
I
we'll
mean,
see how that affects people.
even if they don't fix it, like at least dumb
Lessen the penalty
down the
blows.
penalties a little bit, like just a little bit. I mean, because God, I mean, the three of us here are all defensemen, and you know, you guys. I mean, I've basically taken it out of my game.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I stick
do it
tie
in
up,
front of the net. Yeah,
but I
I'll stick tie up, but that's it. And even that gets you caught sometimes when you
never
got to
stick
make a
lift.
quick. You know, when you got to make a quick. You know, you got to move out to get somebody else or try and pick off a pass, and you're stuck, you know, holding this guy's stick up and you can't move. So I've been caught like that too. So there's a fine line between, okay, do I just throw the X button out the window, or do I still continue to try and find ways to use it? Because I've had a few here and there work,
Yeah,
but you
it's
know,
random.
it's you got to be almost like you almost have to be right face to face with the guy now in order for it to work. You can't be beside him. You can't be next to him. You definitely can't be behind him, which wouldn't work anyway in the first
Right.
place. But it almost seems to work the best when you're face to face. You're looking him right in the face. That's when it seems to work. But yeah, I mean, it's still busted up like crazy.
Yeah, and I'm sure I'm one of many. Even you mentioned being a defenseman now, you have to change your game completely, not being able to stick lift. And so much of my game, I've never been an aggressive guy to go hit people and really go at them. But I would be so confident being able to skate to them and get a stick lift off and try to take the puck away. Now I find myself dropping back so much more and letting them come to me and waiting for that perfect poke check opportunity.
Right.
And, you know, I think that's a big thing going back to just the idea of defensemen. You need to find the defenseman now that can really adapt to that well. And I'm slowly but surely adapting to it. But,
Yeah.
you know, that's going to be a big difference maker on defense are people that have adapted, not stick lifting, or just able to use positioning, able to use body checking, because checking is certainly better this year than it was last year,
Absolutely.
and able to poke check their way out of any problems.
For sure. And going back to the defensive point, you know, it's, you know, a lot of these NHL teams, they spend that money on those defensemen because of the forwards that are in the league. I mean, you got guys in this league who have serious skill, like high end skill. And, you know, the only way to stop that is to have defenders who have high end skill, who can think just as quickly as those forwards and read the plays as they're happening. So you got to spend that money on those defenders, and or at least, you know, I mean, you know, or a lot of teams like you'll see where their defenders are their management teams or, you know, whatever. So they're not having to spend that money on those defenders, but having those high priced defenders in this league is an absolute must. You got to have them to stop these forwards that are coming at you on a nightly basis.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll see how all of these guys, how the superstars from NHL 16, we'll see who will be able to maintain at the top of LG through season 3 now that we're into NHL 17, and what names that weren't up there in NHL 16 that emerged to be front runners on offense, on defense, better goalies. I think we're going to see a big change across the goalies in the league. I mean, your top guys that are amazing are still going to be amazing, but I think you're going to start to see some new names emerge at all these positions, and a lot of it just has to do with style of play. The game itself has been designed to it caters less to the guy that wants to dangle through everybody, and it caters more to the team type, moving the puck, moving it quickly, and trying to get the puck around, getting those defensemen and forwards that are in their defensive zone moving around and creating space for you because you're moving the puck so fast. But we'll see. So let's get to these. We keep going around it. Let's get to these contracts. So, of course, the five highest salaries in the league. Four of them were just won in bidding. One of them was a re-sign. But the top,
We've been talking about all night
well,
long.
I guess top six contracts, because Danny Briere and Jay Claus have the same contract. They're tied at number one on this list. And thank you, Bad Play BJ, for allowing me to read
write
this.
up, man.
Great information.
Fantastic job by Bad Play BJ. If you haven't had a chance to go check that out, it's called Talking Shit with BJ, the contract edition. So
don't be afraid to say it.
Go check that out. It's a great read. I think he did a hell of a job here, and you can tell he put a lot of time into it. So hats off to you, BJ.
Yep. So the two top contracts are Jay Claus and Danny Briere, Columbus, and the Kings, LA Kings, respectively, which is 29.29% of each of those teams' cap, which means for 14 other guys, they have to spend 70% of their cap, and they're giving one guy almost 30% of that cap. It's interesting to see these numbers. It's a great breakdown. But of course, with the second contract, you have a defenseman in Liquefy Star. Tis Woy Woy, not Wah Wah, Mike. He's making fun of you in the shout box.
It is what it is.
He's $10 million to Anaheim.
Try having my name and hear how many people butcher that on a nightly basis. Sorry, buddy.
I've tried that for 29 years. And then Snipe Fest 1122 for Winnipeg. He has a $9.75 million contract, and he's a left D. And then Hardick 88 for Minnesota, $9.25 million, and X Braden for Detroit. I guess he was used as a re-sign to keep him in Detroit by Rahanic.
He was actually one in restricted free agency.
Oh, okay, so it wasn't a re-sign. Yep. But those are your top five contracts in the league, and there's a common theme I see here with these contracts is that you've got some good mix of forwards, defensemen, like I said, but I don't see any goalies as the top contract for these teams. But there are some high contracts on goalies.
There are, and anybody, I don't know. It's interesting to see. I mean, Cons is an amazing goalie. I ain't even gonna doubt that. But it's crazy to see the price that some of these goalies went out for. But hey, your goalie can play 6 games in this league, and if you're winning 6 games a week and your goalie's standing on his head for those 6 games and you're winning those 6 games because of your goalie, who am I to say, go ahead and spend that 4.5, 4.25 on that goalie?
They will.
High price goalies. They did, that's hats off to him. I mean, those goalies that got those contracts are definitely worth it, without a doubt. They are solid as a rock. So it's an interesting move. You don't usually see teams put that much. You don't usually see teams even put $4 million total between both goalies, out there. So to see one goalie go at that price, I believe there was a couple of them that went up that high. That's very interesting to see.
And that's, out of all positions, goalie's the hardest to stay consistent in, because just solely based on the changes they made from NHL 15 to 16 to 17 to the goalie controls and the way goalies move, if you're able to stay consistently good through all 3 titles, you absolutely deserve to take up that much of the salary cap.
For sure.
Right. That is a good point, though. You can definitely get the most games out of anybody on the team as the goalie. So
Mhm.
if you get the right guy, it's not like you're paying him to still only play those 3 games as a goalie. I mean, you're paying him to play 2/3 of your games in the season. I mean, which is just like the real NHL. Your start number one goaltender usually plays about 60 games a year, and that's a lot of games compared to the 27 to anywhere from 25 to 28 games that you can play in the regular season as a forward or a defenseman. So, well, I guess we'll go right down the list. So the Anaheim Ducks have Liquefy
Uh,
Star. What?
yeah, I don't know if yeah, I guess you can go through that whole list, but I don't know if we
Well, I
need to
was
go
just
through that entire thing.
no. Just each team's top player,
Right, yeah.
top
Yeah,
paid player. We don't
yeah.
have to do it.
No, it's all good. Let's just check it out real quick here. Let's see who are the top players in the league. Let's go over that instead of let's not go through
What do you mean
every
top
single one of them.
players in the league?
The top paid guys in the league, right there. Top 5 top
Yeah,
salaries in the league.
that's what I just went through.
Right. Okay. So my bad. I lost my track of thought here. So
All
those
good.
of those 6 guys that are there, what is it? 4 of them are defenders. Did I count that right? Yeah. One,
Um,
two, three, 4. Yeah. 4 of the 6 highest paid players in the league are all defenders. So that's an interesting thing there. But
yeah.
yeah, go ahead and go ahead and list them out and see what we got there as far as those players go. My bad. I just thought
Oh,
it was kind of a longer list, but sure people would want to know.
well, it'll go fast. I won't drag on, and if it starts to drag on, I'll just stop. Um, Anaheim Ducks, of course, we've said it 10 times. Liquefy Star, 10 million. Arizona Coyotes, we paid Schroyer 7.75 million. Boston Bruins, Agent Suxta, 008 left wing, 8 million. Buffalo Sabres, Sobo 18. Who did he just get traded?
Yes, he did.
Okay. He was their top one at 6 million, but he just got traded to
Islanders.
Islanders for I got to it was a
Tone
great
setup.
Tone Setter. I just remember it being a really cool name. Just looking at all these names and they run together. Calgary Flames paid Downey 7.5 million. Carolina Hurricanes have Frankie Scott returning. He's making 6 million as a center. Chicago Blackhawks Class Act 27, left wing 7.25 million. I believe he's on the 3rd year of his deal from season 1
He
from
is,
Nashville. So I
and
think that was traded to them, that contract.
that's a boy who's going to get a pay raise after the end of the season, unless he decides to go to goalie. And we all know what kind of a goalie Class Act is too. So he probably would go to the highest paid goalie in the league if he ever decided to go that route, like he did in IHL. But yeah, he's definitely in line for a pay raise come season 4, I would think.
For sure. The Colorado Avalanche paid 6 million for Case Stiding. One, he's a center. Columbus, Nordiques Blue Jackets, as bad play BJ put it in his list, paid J Claus 10.25 mil. The Dallas Stars have Crazy Lish, 5.5 million. Returning at left wing for them, and like we were saying before, they didn't have much of a roster to fill out for themselves this year. A lot of returning guys, including him, or I guess he was acquired via trade, but they didn't have to go out and worry about signing any of these guys to one of these big contracts because they didn't have many positions to fight over. The Detroit Red Wings have Braden, one of the top 5 contracts in the league at 8.5 mil. Oilers have Matt the Cool Cat, who he was with the Syracuse Crunch last season.
Yep.
And he's an Xbox guy. Really solid winger, really good winger. I think he ended up minus J Claus officially finished 2nd in the league in points in the AHL last season. So we'll see how he does in Edmonton. Florida Panthers, just for the show, they traded for him. He's at 6 million, and then Danny Briere with the Kings, same as J Claus, 10.25 mil. And then the Minnesota Wild have Hardick, 88. At 9.25 mil. Do you want to get 15 through 30 there, Goose?
Yeah, I got you there. We got Montreal Canadiens. We got Big Mummy, right defenseman, 7.25 mil. Nashville Predators, TCX 7 at 7 mil. He's a left winger. Devils have Turk Nasty, 71, center at $6 million. The Islanders stay-at-home D, left defenseman, I would hope, 6.5 mil. Puck U33, right defenseman, 7.25 for the Rangers. Senators, we got, let me scroll down here. BFC, I think I'm saying, Beavesy, okay.
Yep.
7.75 mil, another defenseman. We have a ton of defensemen on this list if you didn't have the idea yet. Flyers got Rishkoy at 7.25. Let's see here. Penguins have Pete Sear.
Yeah. I've always called him Kaiser.
We'll apologize ahead of time for the rest of the season if we screw up your name. Sorry.
Send us a PM with the proper pronunciation.
He's at 7.25 mil lefty as well. Kenton Trace for the Sharks, 5.5. We have Guan for the Blues at 8. He's a lefty. Tampa Bay formerly had DDW4 at 8 mil. He's now moved over to Nashville.
And becomes their highest paid player.
Yep, exactly. That's true. Toronto, Jay, 6.219, 6.5 mil. He's a left wing. Phenomenal one for the Canucks at 7.5 center. Good old Chiz Nasty for the Capitals at 6.75. And the Winnipeg Jets, 9.75 left defenseman, Snipe Fest, 11.22.
And those are your highest contracts by team in the league before trades were done, though we did kind of correct that.
Yeah. You didn't see too many. I mean, it's going to be tough to trade these big ticket guys. Obviously, Tampa Bay got it done with DD, but you know, it's tough to trade these guys. There's a lot of money.
14 of the top 30 highest paid players on the rosters are defensemen. So that's just about half.
Yeah.
Yep. You know, which is pretty crazy to me. I would think if I went through there and counted, I would have to hope that the rest were mostly centers, but you do see some wings sprinkled in there, like DDW and Jay. Jay's a phenomenal player. Very, very underrated player in this league. I think he's
Claus is technically a wing this season.
He switched back to center.
Oh, did he?
Yep, he pulled the wool there. Tried to anyway. A lot of people found Jay Claus, whether he's a left.
If I pay you $10.25 million and you're on left wing and I want you to play center, that's where you're going to play.
But, yeah, I mean, I would think for the most part it's mostly defensemen and centers because, you know, as we all know, a lot of centers in this league, you know, are relied upon to be that third defenseman out there, and basically they're the quarterbacks of the unit. You know, they basically cover for everybody on the ice, so they're just as important to me as the defenders are in this league, without a doubt.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. So I guess let's move to, you know, we'll start wrapping this up here in just a minute. Let's just do a quick, how you guys feeling for this weekend? The season starts in 2 days. You know, this will be all three of our first full season in the NHL. Each of us has played games in the NHL, but this will be our first time to go along for the entire ride, the ups and downs of an NHL season. I'm extremely excited. You know, every team you play against, at least for the most part, is going to be a tough team every night through the three lines. You don't know how the game's going to play. You don't know what kind of bounces you're going to get, and you're going to be facing the top guys in this league on a nightly basis. How you guys feeling heading into the season? I'm excited, and I want to play the best, even if I get smashed in the face a couple of times playing them. You know, I hold myself to a higher standard and like to play against the better players.
Go ahead, Goose.
Yeah, I'm excited, of course. Tampa Bay seems like a fun team, a great group of guys, and, you know, finally tomorrow I can get my final broadcast out for the radio station I work with, so then I can really, you know, get more practice in with the team and really get ready for the season. I've been playing at club as much as I can, but, you know, it's a first season in the big time in LG, and it's going to be a lot of fun getting to know everybody. And again, you know, coming in last season, being in the AHL, you know, I'd interacted, especially being on a team with everyone I knew, I interacted with only a handful of people. So now talking to completely new people, guys who I saw in the NHL when I watched games last year, like, oh, that kid's pretty good, huh? And now I'm teaming with them, sort of thing. So it'll be exciting to get started. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun year. I think we're going to have a lot more involvement in the NHL with players, not necessarily just bashing each other or whatever. I think there's going to be a lot more camaraderie in the NHL this season. There's going to be a lot more respectful competitiveness. At least that's my hopes anyway. We'll see how it goes once the season starts. But I think there's some teams set up to do some really good things this year, and there's going to be some teams out there that are going to be some heavy hitters, and they're going to be damn tough to play against on a night in and night out basis. Teams like your Dallases, your Vancouvers, your
Chicago.
Edmontons, your Chicagos. Oh shit, they're all in the Western Conference. Wait. So, in the Eastern Conference, you have your Tampas, you have your Washingtons, you have your Nashvilles, your Columbuses. Florida's going to be a good team. There's going to be a lot of, there's going to be some teams that are sitting up at the top and basically cruising into the playoffs and hanging around, the top 5 of each division. What I'm excited to see this year are the teams that go out and grab those wild card spots. We know that the top 3 teams from each division make it in, and then there's those 2 wild card spots throughout the season that they're going to be there for the taking. I think, outside the top 6 teams in each conference, everybody's going to be in a dogfight for those last 2 spots, and it's going to be fun to watch that race come together and see who actually jumps up and grabs hold of those spots to get themselves into the playoffs. It's going to be an exciting season. I'm looking forward to it. I've played 18 games in the NHL so far, I think in 2 seasons or somewhere around there with playoffs and everything in the first season. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be difficult, but that's what you want in this game. You want to play the best competition. Otherwise, you're just going to be, stuck in the mud. You want to be playing the best because that makes you better. And you got to want to be able to adjust your game. You got to be able to want to practice. You got to have that want to get better. Some guys just have the attitude where, oh, I'm good, I don't need to play, I'm just going to show up and play. And some of them can do that and be really good, and others do that and they just sit at that, star level, and they never make it to the superstar level. So it's going to be fun to see who comes out on top in the scoring race this year. It's going to be a lot to watch. It's going to be a lot to take in, and I can't wait to cover it. It's going to be an interesting season.
Yeah, for sure. Just want to give a shout out to Kearns, who thinks we must have put in the notes not to mention his name. Your name got mentioned. And I also was asked by MA Scottless20 from Edmonton, where's my shout out, damn it? Well, there it is, man. There's your shout out. What's going on? Yeah, quite honestly, we're less than 48 hours, or I guess right at games start, 47 hours from now. 7 o'clock Sunday night, 9 o'clock Sunday night. And, I'm about ready to go get a couple more games in, so I'm not coming into the weekend rusty. So, it was fun to talk tonight. We didn't want to get too deep into the rosters tonight because we know moves are still getting made, and we don't want to bore you to death with going over all the stuff that people have been talking about for the last week and a half in the shout box and as a whole in threads. But next week we'll be ready to go with stats and league leaders and things that you guys suggest things to us. We'll talk about them.
And just to let everybody know, as we did this last season, to try and go through every team and every division in one show is basically impossible. So what we're going to do starting next week, we're going to do our weekly wrap up. We're going to talk about the league leaders, everybody that had good weeks, some that had bad. But we're also going to pick a division each week of the next 4 weeks and get in depth on that division and really break the teams down and look and see how they've started, where they're going, their players. So that's when we're going to get in depth on each team. So if you feel like we left you out here, don't worry. We'll get to you eventually. We're really going to dive into those divisions here. What do you think here, guys? You guys got any bold predictions on the season? Let's hear them. Let's see. Anybody got a bold prediction for season 3 in the
Coyotes are going undefeated.
No, that's not even going to happen. So that's absolutely an impossibility.
It was bold.
That's more like ridiculous prediction.
Who's the best team in the league in your opinion? They're not going undefeated. So, I just, before I give any kind of bold prediction, I just want to say next week we'll talk about the West Central, which is, Blackhawks, Blues, Wild, Predators, Jets, Stars, Wild, and the Avalanche. We'll talk about them next week. A lot of people have a lot of things to say about the teams in that division, including, of course, the Blackhawks owned by Scoots, and what they've done and what kind of team they've put together. So we'll start with them next week. Bold predictions. I predict somebody's going to win the Stanley Cup. That's for sure.
My
Give me
bold
a minute.
prediction is that I think that for the second season in a row, Theos is going to lead the league in points. Even though we have J Claus coming into the mix here, I think there's going to be a tiny little bit of a learning curve for Claus, but he's a superstar in this league, hands down. But I think Theos has been here for going on his second season now. I think Theos is definitely going to lead the league in scoring again this season.
Goose?
I'm
And
trying
if
to
you
think.
can't come up with one, guys,
Yeah, I can't think of anything too bold that's not overly ridiculous. I can think of something bold. It's just, it's not going to happen.
Okay, so mine is, and this doesn't come from a place of he's on our team, but and we'll see how this plays out. But I predict last year's Norris Trophy winning defenseman is going to win the Selke Trophy on center this season, Schroyer 69.
That's a bold prediction right there. There you go.
It may not
That's what we're
happen.
looking for.
We'll see what happens, but I think he's got the skill level to do it, so we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, well, yeah. We'll definitely see how it's going to play out because I envision us seeing the top lines for every team for at least for a little while here.
Yeah.
Scrub hunters.
Bless you.
Yeah,
Anything else you guys want to cover tonight, or should we save it for a show next week that's going to be on fire and have a lot of shit to talk about, as Bad Play BJ put it?
Well, if you play it up like that, I guess we have to wait till next week.
Good. Dun, 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 dun. That's our closing music. We don't have any this week. But we will be back next Saturday night at 9 Eastern, not Friday night like it is this week. Good luck to everybody in the league, NHL, AHL, but especially the 30 NHL teams who are about to embark on an 82-game journey through LG. Good luck to everybody, and I hope your seasons go well, and we will be back each week to talk about how you guys have done.
Yeah, once again, we'll see everyone next week as we'll dive into the first division that we're covering, get in-depth coverage on those teams, give you a wrap-up of the week, and, good luck to everyone. Have fun this week. Go out there, get it done. Put your boots on. It's time to go to work, boys. See ya.